about connections between white supremacists and Islamic terrorists.
When there's a conflict between Scalia's conservative values and the Constitution of the United States, he throws away the Constitution.
When we do have secret prisons, that is not what America's all about.
Let's go to Mark in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hello, America. Welcome to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Mark Levine. Today, America is angry. Some are angry at the current administration. Even more are angry at the past administration. And even more are angry at the largest insurance company in the world, known by its now infamous initials, AIG, the American Insurance Group. A company that, if you will, bet a lot of money, bet not only its business, but really the entire world's business, kind of like going to Las Vegas and putting it all in on a poker game, drawing a wrong card, and now we're all paying their bad debts. I don't have to tell you that AIG was bailed out by the Federal Reserve to the tune of, well, now it's getting close to $170 billion. And yet they still paid their executives $160 million in retention payments. Congress is up in arms. The people are up in arms. The House of Representatives has already voted on a bill to tax away 90% of those bonuses and bonuses of others who happen to take federal money and still pay their people bonuses. But this is not an old question. This is not something, I should say this is an old question. This is not something that hasn't happened before. I think back 100 years ago to Standard Oil, the monopolies of those times, the large railroad companies. The populists were angry then, too, against big business, and it led to some real innovations, things like the Sherman Antitrust Act, the Trust Busters, breaking up monopolies. It's my contention tonight that a company should never be too big to fail, and if a company ever gets to be too big to fail, we need to make sure it never gets to that status. It's a very complex issue of economics, of bankruptcy law, of politics, and of course partisanship, Democrats and Republicans. And for that part, I always invite my Republican guest, Republican strategist Mike Lane. He's the president of Intelephant Strategies. Mike, welcome to the Inside Scoop.
Mark, thanks for having me back. I look forward to tonight.
Well, I'll tell you, I am not as upset by the populist anger. I know a lot of pundits are wringing their hands and saying the people with their pitchforks and blowtorches, angry at AIG, angry at Wall Street, that there's some horrible danger. I actually don't mind a bit of populist anger. I think it's justified in this case, and I think it helps keep policymakers, both in Congress and in the administration, and those executives on Wall Street recognizing that there's a point to which the American people will not go. And even though the bonuses are 0.1% of the amount of money we've given them, they are so egregious to reward people who, in effect, have ruined the entire economy, to reward that company, that I think that kind of populism scares Wall Street, and Wall Street should be scared and understand that they shouldn't practice these excesses.
Mark, I have no problem with the people being angry. In fact, I'm angry myself. I put myself in that category. I think what AIG did in distributing those bonuses was absolutely atrocious, uncalled for. I can think of 4 or 5 other superlatives, which I'll spare our viewers. But let me quote our president, who I think very eloquently says, the one thing we don't want to do is we don't want to govern out of anger.
Well, I think what he said, to be more precise, he did say we don't want to govern out of anger, but he says we need to channel that anger. And I think you'll find that a lot of great moments in American history are from channeled anger. Indeed, as I mentioned, the great violations of ethical practices, the great wealth of the trusts and so forth, and at the turn of the century led to a lot of reforms. They led to the Food and Drug Administration. They led to the Sherman Antitrust Act. The run on the banks in the 1930s led to the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. The Panic of 1907 led to the Federal Reserve. A lot of terrific progressive institutions, the kinds that protect us today, come out of abuses.
Well,
this is an opportunity for systemic change.
I don't know that I'd call the FDIC progressive. I don't know that I'd call...
You wouldn't?
No, I wouldn't, no.
But you agree it's a terrific institution.
I think it served its purpose, yes.
And it continues to serve its purpose today.
Well, I think it's out of control today, but Mark, how much money has it just invented over the last 60 days and shoveled out the door?
We're talking about the Federal Reserve. I want to compare. I thought the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC. The people that take over banks when they fail. You're okay with them?
I'm okay with both of them.
All right.
I'm okay with both of them. But how much money has been invented and shoveled out the door in the last 60, 70 days? The answer is it's so high we can't count it. They've monetized the debt, which is something we've never done in this particular country before. Monetizing the debt being defined as the government saying, oh, look, we've just taken this money in over here that we didn't have. Let's transfer it over here to this hand like that. Oh, look at this money we just found. Now we're pumping that into the economy.
They printed it.
They printed it, right?
They printed. They printed millions and trillions of dollars.
How irresponsible can we be? I think it's an institution that's out of control. I think that we're going to pay the price. I think this country is standing by for the most oppressive hyperinflation that we've ever seen in the history of the world. I mean, it's going to get to the point where, if you remember the days in Poland when they did this, and people, at one point they had to have $1 to buy a loaf of bread, and by the end of the week they had to have a wheelbarrow to buy a loaf of bread. That's what we're doing to this country, and I'm scared.
Well, I'll tell you this, and I'm going to deal specifically with what you said, but also get back to the specific question of AIG. Ben Bernanke, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, the person who, by the way, made the decision to bail out AIG in the first place, and I want to talk about that decision specifically, but he is a student of the Great Depression, and he said there are two main lessons he learns from the Great Depression. He said this on 60 Minutes just a week ago. He said one is that we cut the money supply when we needed to increase it in the Great Depression. And the other thing we did is we cut the budget deficit when we needed to increase it. And that both those lessons, we were contracting the fiscal economy, government spending. We were contracting the monetary economy. And what should have been an ordinary recession in 1929 turned into the Great Depression. Now, his belief, and he was, of course, appointed by George W. Bush. He was not an Obama appointee. And I certainly criticize certain things he's did. But it seems to me his basic understanding is exactly what they teach you in macroeconomics, that when you have times of recession, you need both fiscal and monetary stimulus. Yes, you even print money. Now, I agree that when the economy starts doing better, when we start coming out of this, and I think due to the actions of the Obama administration, I think we will see an end to the recession by the end of this year. Then absolutely, you've got to stop. You've got to slow down. You've got to stop printing money. There's a time to do this and a time not to do this. This is clearly the time to do this.
Well, I think everyone is expecting us to be out of the recession by the end of this year. Before Obama took office and before any of his plans started to take shape, before Congress took some of the actions that they've taken, which I think have harmed the economy, the Congressional Budget Office, the nonpartisan, most accurate forecaster that we have in the country today, was saying that if we do nothing, if we do absolutely nothing, we will bottom out in the third quarter and begin the recovery right then. Now, I fear that what Congress, in concert with Obama, has done is they have delayed the end of the recession. I think they've made the recovery less robust than it otherwise would have been. But yes, we will recover. Well, I hope we will recover. I do have some doubts based on some of the things we've done. And we'll get into that over the course of the next hour.
You'll have to show me your CB. My understanding, and I used to work with the Congressional Budget Office, what they do is they figure out how much...
I just read their reports.
Well, they figure out how much programs cost. And they say that if the economy gets better in the third quarter, it'll cost this much. If it gets better in the last quarter. They're not generally the people who make economic predictions. That is the President's Council of Economic Advisors. Their job is to figure out how much something costs. You're right, they're nonpartisan. They do the best they can. They're number crunchers. But their job is not to predict the ends of recession. There are other economic branches of the government that do that. So I'll have to see.
But they did it.
Well, I'll have to see what you're talking about. As I understand the Republican solution, and they won't propose it, neither John Boehner, your leader in the House, nor Mitch McConnell, your leader in the Senate, will give an alternative budget. As I understand the Republican solution, it's do nothing. Just say no, do nothing, hold tight, let all the people go unemployed, let all the people lose their homes, let the banks fail, and just sit there and hope maybe we'll come out of this.
No, I think actually, Mark, you're mischaracterizing what the Republican solution was. The House Republicans tried to offer an alternative.
What was that alternative?
The alternative was about a $350, $375 billion package to stimulate the economy. It was,
but they never gave a budget. There is no Republican budget.
Well, the budget isn't up for consideration yet. They will offer a budget when there's one there. But we're talking about the stimulus package now. Their proposal for the stimulus package was about a $350 to $375 billion stimulus, primarily in the mode of tax cuts.
Tax cuts for the wealthy.
Tax cuts for small business.
Tax cuts for the wealthy.
Well, if you think every small business person is a wealthy person, tax cuts for small business, reduction in the capital gains tax, because that is what you really need to reverse, is the investment of capital into the economy. That's the thing that is holding us, just flat on our back today. And assorted other things in terms of real shovel-ready construction projects, not the kind of shovel-ready construction projects as defined by Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid, which is to say, if you can get it going by 2011, that's shovel-ready. No, it would be something that they could get out the door in the next 6 months.
Build a bridge to nowhere, whether we need it or not. That's the Republican plan.
If it creates jobs, that was the objective. But let's get it done while the people need it. If we're going to start recovering this year, which both you and I have said is likely, which the Congressional Budget Office has said is likely, which most of the private economists say is likely, depending on the drag that
it could be the end of 2009, the beginning of 2010.
Depending on the drag. Why are we putting stimulus money in 2010 and 2011? It just doesn't make any sense, other than the fact that, as President Obama says, I'm here because I like big government and I want big government for the sake of big government.
Mike, I recall the Republican plan. It was virtually all tax cuts. You know, of course, that the Obama administration gives a tax cut to 98% of small business, those that earn under $250,000. The big difference between the Republican plan and the Democratic plan is that you wanted to give a lot of money to a lot of very wealthy people. Capital gains, as you know, is almost all, it helps very rich people. It's the reason why Warren Buffett's secretary pays a higher rate, income tax rate, than Warren Buffett does. And that was the Republican stimulus package. And this is what George Bush did 8 years ago and got us in this
More
mess.
people pay capital gains than don't pay capital gains in this country. So don't tell me this is only for the rich.
Rich people have a much greater percentage of their income in capital gains. There is a reason why Warren Buffett's secretary pays a higher rate than he does, and you want to lower Warren Buffett's rate while not touching the secretary's rate, transferring more money from the poor to the rich. We tried that in the Bush administration, and it's what got us into this mess to begin with.
What about teachers and firefighters and other public servants?
Obama gives them a tax cut.
Well, all those people,
Republicans wouldn't.
All those people who have all of their retirement tied up in union pension funds, which are invested in the market, and those pension funds do pay capital gains. So what you're doing is you're robbing our civil servants, our police, and our teachers of their retirement, Mark.
Why don't we lower their income tax rates? Why don't we give
I agree.
Why don't we give every teacher and police officer $1,000 instead of the 28 cents they're going to get from capital gains? Wait, I remember. Obama's budget did exactly that.
Let's not give them anything. Let's let them earn things, and let's let them keep more of the money that they make. Let's let them have a good retirement that they can plan for instead of taxing them into poverty.
Mike, here's the heart of the IAG problem. The Republican solution always seems to be transfer money from the poor to the rich. Allow the rich to be unregulated, to do whatever they want. If they fail, we come in and give them shovels of money. And then with those shovels of money, they can give whatever bonuses they like. This is the Bush plan. It hasn't worked, and that's why the people are angry.
I've already told you, AIG committed an egregious act. It's both immoral. It unfortunately wasn't illegal, although the Congress is trying to make it illegal.
Right. And I support the House plan to tax away those bonuses. How about you?
Well, I think it's one of the scarier ideas I've ever heard.
So I would take that, I mean, you're against it. When we come back from break,
it's scary, Mark.
I want to describe the House plan. I want to go through what happened with AIG, and then find out, Mike, why you're opposed to giving that money right back to taxpayers, the money they shouldn't have paid to begin with. I'm curious to know. I'm curious to know what you think as well. The toll-free number is 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275. We'll be right back after this.
Some dreams are universal. Dreams that inspire us. Multiple sclerosis is a devastating disease that changes lives forever. The National MS Society does more for people with MS than any organization in the world. But we can't do it alone. To get involved, visit us online at nationalmssociety.org. or call 1-800-FIGHT-MS. This is why we're here. Because nobody dreams of having multiple sclerosis.
What's wrong with this picture? Half of young Americans can't locate economic powers like Japan and India. 20% can't even find the Pacific Ocean. Without geography, our children aren't ready for the world. Geography is everywhere. It's incredible creatures, rhythm, fashion, flavor. It's economics and politics. It's change. Understanding connections between people and places is critical in the 21st century. That's why we created mywonderfulworld.org. Go there now for your free parent and teacher action kits and give our kids the power of global knowledge. Because kids who understand our world today can succeed in it tomorrow.
Here again, the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. The situation with AIG is indeed complicated. A lot of Americans are very angry, and some perhaps don't know the history of what happened here. It's important to understand what happened, I think, so that we can understand what the solution should be, both specifically with the problem with AIG and for the future. AIG, the American Insurance Group, is still the largest insurance company in the United States, I believe in the world, and they were an ordinary insurance company. And then they started doing what a lot of banks started doing, which is betting on subprime mortgages. See, some people blame the current economy on the housing crisis. Well, the housing crisis really is just the catalyst. It's the match, if you will, that came into this huge bucket of gasoline. And the bucket of gasoline is something that was obscure to all of us 1 year ago, something called credit derivative swaps. What's a credit derivative swap? A credit derivative swap is much like betting on the horses in Las Vegas. Only betting on the horses is likely to give you a better return. A credit derivative swap is indeed an insurance contract that's not called an insurance contract because AIG didn't want it regulated by insurance regulators. So what they did is they made a bet. They made a bet that the housing market would go up forever. They made a bet that subprime mortgages would always be paid off. They made a huge bet, a massive bet, a multi-billion, $100 billion bet that when you add up to all the other bets around the world became trillions of dollars. Now, normally, when a business makes a bad decision, capitalism, the free market, says the business should fail. It should go bankrupt. The creditors can come in and take what they can get. The business fails, and we move on with another business. But AIG, unfortunately, is considered too big to fail. There are other companies like that. Citibank, for example, is another one. And because it is too big to fail, because AIG's tentacles are in virtually every financial institution in the world, if they failed, the Federal Reserve determined that the entire world financial system would collapse. So Benjamin Bernanke, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, who was appointed by George Bush in 2006, made the decision to give $80 billion to AIG. He made this decision while George Bush was still president. And Treasury Secretary at that time, Hank Paulson, came to Congress and asked for money to help bail out AIG and these other banks. At the time, Paulson did not want any restrictions on corporate salaries. He didn't want any restrictions at all. He just wanted the money to go out. It was an emergency to save the financial system, they told us, and the Fed gave the money to AIG without any restrictions. Then, along with the change of administration, AIG needed more money. And they came back to the well again. They came back to Congress. And this time, Congress said, now wait a minute. The money wasn't well spent the first time. We didn't know where all the money went. We're putting restrictions on this. Senator Chris Dodd, the chairman of the Banking Committee in the Senate, decided to put a restriction in there on executive salaries to make sure that executives could not get bonuses with our tax money. He put it forward, and someone in the Treasury Department said, you know what? That's fine going forward after February 17th of 2009. But going back with these retroactive contracts, it's not legal to violate these contracts. They've already been signed. You have to be able to pay these people. So Chris Dodd's people reluctantly responded and did the modifications that the Treasury Secretary's people asked him to do. What I don't think either realized was the extreme populist anger at this. That may be that the contracts couldn't be violated, but that doesn't mean that you couldn't negotiate a better offer. Now that the anger has come out, now that the people know what they're doing, now that Wall Street understands that these bonuses are not looked upon kindly by the American people, who after all are fitting the bill for all these companies. Congress has gone, the House has gone already, and has declared a clawback. They have said we're going to tax 90% of these bonuses for people that make over $250,000 a year and work for companies that have received more than $5 billion in taxpayer funds. So it's a relatively small provision. It affects a relatively small number of people. You have to work for a company that's gotten more than $5 billion in taxpayer funds. That's a lot of money. And you have to be making more than $250,000. And you're taxed on your bonus, 90% of that, over $100,000. So they're not confiscating all of it. They are, however, taking most of it back. It seems to me that this is one solution. There are other solutions to the problem. The Senate is considering a similar bill, and people like my friend Mike Lane are opposed to it. Tell me why, Mike.
Well, let's first go through a little bit of the history, Mark.
Okay.
Let me correct a few of the things, or supplement a few of the things that you said.
All right.
It wasn't someone in the Treasury Department. Whoever in the Treasury Department went to Chris Dodd and said, you know, we really need to specifically approve these bonuses, was working directly for the Secretary of the Treasury, who's working directly for President Barack Obama. The Secretary of the Treasury, as you know, Mr. Geithner, tried to claim he didn't know anything about it until the
2 days before the bonuses were paid.
Well, it was, I think, the 10th or something like that.
Right, that's right.
When in fact, it's been all over the internet. There was a Democratic congressman from New York who specifically grilled him on this very issue 7 days before he said he even knew that this thing existed. And he was asked very specifically, well, what about this $165 billion in additional bonuses that AIG is going to pay out next week, Mr. Secretary? And Mr. Secretary had absolutely no problem with it at that time. And it was only after he was caught in the lie that he didn't know anything about it till the 10th. And the tape came out all over YouTube that he was specifically asked about it on March 3rd. That, you know, everybody started covering their sixes and et cetera. So Geithner knew about it. Geithner, why did he do this? Well, why did Dodd do it? Well, you know, let's follow the money trail, which is always a good thing.
Understanding, of course, that Dodd wanted to limit the salaries.
Who received,
and the Treasury Secretary wanted it.
Who received the most money in campaign contributions of anybody in Congress or anybody, anything, from AIG over the years? Well, it just happens to be Senator Chris Dodd.
And yet he limited their bonuses.
No, Chris Dodd was the one who changed it to specifically authorize their bonuses,
well,
Mark.
hold on. This is important to understand
He specifically authorized their bonuses after receiving $104,000 in campaign contributions from AIG.
Before you pick on Chris Dodd, prior to the Dodd Amendment being offered.
This is the same Chris Dodd, by the way, who got that sweetheart countrywide loan deal to buy his house.
You can attack him personally all you want, but let's get the facts straight.
That's not a personal attack. That's an attack on the way he conducts.
You can say whatever you want. I mean, you can talk about you know, the governor of New York.
He's in AIG's pocket.
And the senator from Louisiana and their sexual problems.
Let's just call him Dodd Man walking.
Let's just give the facts.
Okay.
The facts are, before Senator Dodd offered his amendment, there were no restrictions on bonuses whatsoever in the bill. That's number one fact.
No.
Number two fact.
The amendment was offered by Senator Wyden, first of all.
It's offered by Wyden and Dodd.
No, it was not. No, Dodd.
It was Dodd's committee. He passed his committee.
It was not. It was offered by Wyden and a co-sponsoring Republican. I forget the Republican who did it. But it was not Dodd.
Dodd wanted the amendment. Dodd voted for the amendment. Dodd put the amendment in the bill. It passed. He voted for it, and it passed the Senate initially, entirely restricting all bonuses.
And
you don't dispute that.
And then, as you know,
but let's get it straight.
As you know,
don't
in conference,
that if
Dodd took that amendment out.
No, that's not true. Let's go through it again.
Okay.
Before the amendment was offered, there was nothing restricting executive bonuses. It was offered. Dodd supported it.
By Wyden and a Republican.
He supported it in committee. He supported it on the floor. He voted for it. It was part of the Senate package.
And then he took it out in conference.
So far, we're in agreement, right?
And then he took it out in conference.
So far, we're in agreement.
Yes.
Okay. Then we know that someone at the Treasury Department.
No, this is before the Treasury Department. He took the Wyden amendment out in conference.
Wait a minute. Before he took it out in conference, someone at the Treasury Department contacted someone on Dodd's staff.
No.
And the Treasury Department told...
You're missing a step. Dodd in conference took the Wyden language out and inserted his own language in there, substituting for the Wyden language, which had some restrictions on the executive payouts. Then, after Dodd's
amendment,
after Dodd struck the Wyden amendment in conference, put his own language in there, then Geithner dispatched his flunky over to talk to Dodd and said, make this happen.
Dodd's original amendment prohibited the AIG bonuses in the future and in the past. It voided the contracts in the past, and it banned them in the future. And that's the amendment that originally passed the Senate, supported by Chris Dodd, and by the way, every Democrat, and by the way, opposed by most Republicans. And I'll show you some of their clips of why they opposed it in a minute. So Dodd had that amendment. Then you're absolutely right. Somebody from Geithner's staff, someone from the Treasury Secretary's Department, came in and said, look, it is illegal to void the past contracts. We can stop the contracts in the future. We want to do that. Right. But the past contracts, the ones that were done prior to February 17th, the ones that were done while Bush was in office, the ones that were done when Hank Paulson decided to give all the money to AIG and Ben Bernanke decided to give all the money to AIG without any restrictions whatsoever, that there were legal problems. You couldn't void those contracts. And therefore, to avoid the legal problems, we need to restrict this somewhat. Dodd acquiesced. The bill became law. You dispute that?
Don't leave out the fact that Dodd took $104,000 in contributions from AIG. And Mark, who was the number 2 person in terms of, despite the fact that he only been in Washington for 4 years, who was the number 2 person in terms of contributions from AIG? It was none other than Barack Obama himself, who got $103,000 in contributions
and we could talk about all the Republicans who got money from Jack Abramoff.
So
we could talk about all the politicians
but we're not
that got money
about,
from all the corporations.
AIG
and we could talk about the fact that I want public financing and you don't.
Who's taking care of AIG in conference? Is it the people who got money from them?
Obviously,
yes,
it's not Dodd, because Dodd
took care of them in
tried to restrict their bonuses.
No, Senator Dodd.
You're not disagreeing with me on the facts. You're just trying to say,
Dodd
got all this money under this system that you support that I don't.
I'm telling you, when Geithner came to Dodd and said, you got to take this out,
Geithner's people
Dodd
came
said,
to Dodd's
okay.
people. It wasn't Geithner and Dodd.
No, it was Geithner and Dodd. Come on.
It was not Geithner and Dodd.
Okay. You think this minor level employee came there without being dispatched by Geithner?
It was probably a mid-level employee, but I'll tell you something.
There are no other employees at Treasury. Geithner's there alone.
Geithner has a lot on his plate.
Yes, he does.
Tim Geithner today, by the way, introduced a system which I want to talk about to save the entire financial system for America and for the world. He's got a lot on his plate. The people at Treasury are not his people, as you know. They are career-level people that are held over from the past because, as you know, his staff hasn't even been appointed yet. He's pretty much there alone with very few people that were chosen by him. So some mid-level person went to Dodd. But the point is, as much as you attack Dodd for getting campaign contributions, which all your Republican friends do,
not from
you
AIG.
cannot
you
deny
can look it up. Not from AIG.
the basic facts,
AIG,
which
Democratic
is
firm.
Dodd was trying to prevent executive compensation, and then he had to withdraw it for legal reasons. 888-488-MARK.
The devil made you do it.
888-488-6275. Back after this.
Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about ripped off money. Nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home?
When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water.
At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site.
That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff.
You know what the best part is?
What?
More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent.
Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free.
I don't know what
dedicated men and women who put their country first.
I'm done with the
campaign.
Okay, I mean.
Here again, the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. We're discussing the AIG bonuses, the effect on the economy with my guest, Republican Mike Lane, and with you. You're welcome to call in and join in the fray. You can agree with Mike or me or disagree with both of us. That's your right. Free speech, American citizen. Give us a call, 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275. Mike, beyond the question of Chris Dodd, I think is the principle of the issue. Chris Dodd tried to limit executive compensation. Now, you're right. Some of the Treasury Secretary told him that you can't do this for legal reasons. You can't go retroactively into the stuff in the Bush administration. You can just do it prospectively. And that's one reason why Congress is doing its tax bill now. I want to get to that. But I do want to show you an article from February 6, 2009. So this article is from 6 weeks ago. It's not that old. But it talks about the Republican position on giving bonuses to companies that have been bailed out at the time when Chris Dodd and Ron Wyden, a Democrat, and some others were trying to limit them. Let me read to you what a number of Republicans said at the time. It says that this was about President Obama because the point we're talking about was a fairly obscure provision that really wasn't talked about very much. We're talking about the broader provision at the time by President Obama to cap compensation for executives at banks that take taxpayer bailout money at $500,000. And let me just read to you what various Republicans said about it. Senate Minority Whip, Republican John Kyle, what he said is because of the bankers' excesses, very bad things begin to happen, like the United States government telling a company what it can pay its employees. Senator Mel Martinez, Republican of Florida, said, quote, what executives have done is troubling, but it's equally troubling to have government telling shareholders how much they can pay the executives. Senator James Inhofe, Republican of Oklahoma, said, is this still America? Do we really tell people how to run a business and who to pay and how much to pay? Well, apparently the Republicans, at least at that time, were not happy with the idea of government restricting compensation. Again, Kit Bond, Republican of Missouri. If Congress can run a financial institution, it belies everything I've seen in this body. Government does not do a good job running private institutions. Com Coburn said, what business do we have telling them how to run banks? Mitch McConnell and John McCain refused to answer the question. Now, that's a lot of Republicans.
And you know what, Mark? They're all wrong. Every one of them is wrong.
Good. I agree with you. They are wrong.
You know what? Money from the government always has strings. If you don't like the strings, then don't take the money. It's that simple. I don't think Obama, we've talked about this, I don't think Obama went far enough. $500,000 is not the right amount. If these people are taking government money, then they ought to be subject to the GS scale, which is that the highest person ought to be making about $180,000 a year or whatever the top government person is. And that's it. And if you don't like it, then don't take the government money. Put those strings on it and let them cry all they want. And the Republicans who specifically are against the concept of these government strings are flat out wrong.
Well, I'm really glad to hear you say that. I think your party is, frankly, very much enraptured by Wall Street, and I think they're tone deaf.
I think they're no. It's a matter of how you do it. You know, you don't want to punish Wall Street. You do want to attach.
I want to punish Wall Street.
Exactly, and you're governing out of anger the way your president tells you you shouldn't do it.
I want to channel that.
You know, well, you're not doing it very well, and Congress specifically didn't do it very well. But look, they're going to be. If you don't like the strings that are attached to the money, then don't take it. It really is that simple.
Okay. Well, then let's talk about how to punish or rectify or put strings on, however you want to talk about, the bonuses on AIG. The problem with the retroactive bonuses, the reason why someone at the Treasury Department told someone on Chris Dodd's staff that you can't do it retroactively is they were worried about the fact that the money was given without any strings under the Bush administration. under Ben Bernanke, and that people were paid under that regime.
First of all, remember, Ben Bernanke, he runs the Fed. It's
that's
an
right.
independent
It is
agency.
independent. Yes, that's true.
You know,
but Hank Paulson also wanted no strings. It's important to point out
I won't argue that,
George Bush's Treasury Secretary in the original TARP proposal wanted absolutely no strings, and it was the Democrats who put the strings on executive compensation.
I just want the record to reflect that the Fed is an independent
Yes, it is.
agency, and
Of
no
course
matter
it
what
is.
Bernanke does, you know,
Yes.
the president doesn't have the right to call him in and behind the woodshed and give him a whooping. Doesn't happen.
No, but he was a Bush appointee. And I actually, I think Bernanke's not such a bad guy, frankly. I disagree with his decision here, but I don't see him as an ideologue. I see him as someone who's trying to do his best for the country. But I think he was wrong, and I think Paulson was wrong. I think that the country understands, the average American understands much better than all the people in Washington that if these people are surviving based on the government, that they're too big to fail, that if they fail, it ruins the entire economy, so they can't declare bankruptcy like ordinary companies, that they are in a privileged position. They are lucky to have a job. They certainly shouldn't be getting a bonus. And you don't dispute that, do you?
You know what? If I was in charge of the company, I would not have given them bonuses. I would not have signed contracts that guarantee them. I mean, what are these? These are called retention bonuses. Now, I haven't read the contracts, but a retention bonus sounds to me like, okay, you know what? We're in a world of hurt here, and we think that you might be the only person who really understands this.
They're from 07, Mike. These are old contracts.
And you can't get us out of this whole thing. But you know, if you hang out for another 6 months, we'll give you a bonus just for hanging out and letting us pick your brain. Well, you know what? What idiot signed that contract?
What idiot signed that contract?
Yeah,
the same people profiting by that contract. Mike, that's the problem. That is exactly how corporations work.
No, it isn't.
I have been arguing that corporate law
how
needs
corporations
to be
work.
Let me tell you how corporations work, and then you can tell me where you disagree.
Mark, I've worked for a lot more corporations than you have.
This is how corporations work.
Okay.
Corporations, according to your textbook, which is wrong, tell you that they're owned by the shareholders elect boards of directors, the boards of directors choose the people who run the company, and they work for the benefit of shareholders. Now, that is a load of BS. The real way corporations work is this. Directors appoint the CEO appoints the directors appoint the CEO appoints the directors give the CEO lots of salary, they give themselves lots of salary, and once a year they go to the shareholders, and they say, should we be voted in as directors? And the shareholders do a non-binding advisory vote. They say, we'll either vote for you or we'll vote against you. And you know what happens if the majority of voters vote against the board of directors? They're still in, because there are no candidates. It's very much like Saddam Hussein's Iraq, or frankly, Russia under the Soviet Union. There's only one candidate for every slot. They're nominated by the board of directors, and they're busy in each other's pockets, giving each other millions of dollars, and not even attending a lot of meetings.
Mark.
There was a proposal by the SEC in 2004 that was rejected by the Bush administration and rejected by a lot of Republican colleagues. And it said that shareholders should be able to nominate alternatives to the board. It was considered a radical, populist, progressive proposal. It was shot down. Shouldn't shareholders have the right to choose different boards of directors? And wouldn't that solve all of the fraud in our corporate system?
You know what, Mark? You don't get up there in the first place unless a majority of the shareholders have approved you to be on the list in the first place. We all know that. Now, wait,
that's not true.
Yeah, it is. It's true. Because who owns the
corporations? You're talking about who began the corporation 100 years ago?
No, I'm talking about today.
Today, the directors nominate the people for their slots.
Who owns the corporations?
Technically, the shareholders.
It is the shareholders.
Technically, in a very technical way.
And well in excess.
But they don't control it.
And well in excess of 50% of the shares of almost every corporation is owned by who?
Pension funds,
institutions,
traded
things
funds,
like that.
Hedge funds.
And those people grab their seats on the board of directors, so the stockholders, in essence, are the ones who choose the slate of the board of directors to go forward.
But they don't, because you and me...
They do.
Look, the hedge fund manager is not the owner of that stock. The pension manager is not the owner of that stock. But if I got a stock in the 401k...
But he is duly appointed by the people who invest in that hedge fund to look after their interests.
Get rid of the people unless you own 50% of the shares. You cannot
Mark,
get rid of a board of directors. I want you to name for me a single corporation.
You can divest yourself of that.
I can invest in maybe France or England or some place where
you can divest yourself. If you don't like it, divest yourself.
Every American corporation of any size does this, Mike. every single American corporation.
So Democrats,
there is no alternative.
Democrats hate Wall Street. Walk away from it.
It's a systemic
Democrats
problem.
hate Wall Street. Walk away from it.
There's an easy answer.
Walk away
it's
from
called democracy.
Right.
Allow the
Sell your
shareholders
shares.
who own the corporation to propose that maybe someone else should run the company. It's a radical idea that you could vote out the person in charge of a corporation. No, they don't.
They actually do, Mark, because the shareholders are the ones who have the seats on the board, the major shareholders, and they're the ones who decide who is and who is not up for election.
Not in large publicly traded corporations.
Yes, in large. Oh,
no.
You don't. All right. Let's say the California Teachers Association pension, owns 30% of the stock in some corporation. You don't think they've got 2 seats on the board and
Mike,
they pass judgment on who gets up on the board and stuff like that?
Of
course they do.
Yes, but
of
you and I,
course they do.
But you and I both know that extremely few of our very large publicly traded corporations, AIG, Citibank, GE, Disney, I can name all the Dow stocks. I don't think there's a single one of them that has a shareholder that's more than 5% of any of those. So what it means is you end up with shareholders technically being the owners, but having zero power whatsoever. And so the directors appoint the CEO appoints the directors, they pat each other's backs with millions of dollars, they get bonuses, even as the company goes downhill, they get golden parachutes. AIG bonuses specifically said that we don't care how the company performs, we get these bonuses. Now, how do you stop something like this? There's only one way, and that is a law. We need systemic change.
There are very few companies that actually award bonuses like that. Bonuses
virtually all of them do, Mike.
No. Bonuses are generally awarded for performance, and performance more than showing up every day and saying, okay, you're here 6 months later, you've earned a bonus because you haven't quit.
It's not true, Mike. Most of the companies on Wall Street today, they have the performance bonuses. You know what they've done? They've lowered it. They said, we have to increase...
They have performance bonuses.
Yeah, but they lower it. They lower it. If you have to get 100 on a test, and you take the test and you get a 63, and then the standard is lowered to 50, and suddenly you've won the test with extra credit when you really failed, that's not meeting a performance bonus. That's changing the standards of the test. We need systemic change. And the United States government now owns 80% of AIG stock.
Well, then let's change it.
The real scandal is...
Let's change it.
The real scandal is that shareholders, like the United States government, don't have power over their own corporations.
Well, they certainly do. You know what? We own 80%. Anytime President Obama wants to go in and replace the board with his own people, he can do it. And
we need to do it.
What's the president doing?
Well, the problem is these retroactive payments.
All right.
Let me ask you this in general.
Look.
Okay.
They were jerks to give the money. They were jerks
to
take the money.
They weren't jerks. They were greedy. It was a rational act.
Okay. Well, greed's not a bad thing.
It's a rational act.
Greed's not a bad thing.
They decided they could grab this huge pot of taxpayer money and stick it in their pockets.
They were immoral.
That was not irrational.
They were immoral to do it, but more immoral than them awarding and taking the bonuses, which consist of taxpayer money, is the fact that the government is then going in not only to change the rules in the middle of the game, but they're trying to change the rules after the game is over.
That's right.
Declare new winners, confiscatorily tax
Windfall
someone.
Profits tax. That's right.
As Charles Schumer was very happy to admit, we're going to punish you for what you've done. And Mark, as I read the Constitution, that is not allowed.
Where do you read that in the Constitution? I have my Constitution right here. You may be talking about a bill of attainder.
I'm talking about a bill of attainder, yes.
All right, let's talk about a bill of attainder. Because you're right, the Constitution says that no bill of attainder shall be passed. What is a bill of attainder? As you well know, but maybe some of our listeners don't. A bill of attainder is a law addressed at a few specific people. It's often talked about in the criminal context, but it can be used in the civil context, to punish a specific group of people. The law passed by the House, I'm proud to say, is broader than that. Had they simply said, AIG employees return your bonuses, it would be a bill of attainder. It would be unconstitutional. That's not what the House bill said. The House bill said any company that receives more than $5 billion in U.S. funds, and there's more than just AIG, Citibank, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, I can name a number of them, any company that makes more than $5 billion and employees earn $250,000 or more and get bonuses, 90% is taxed of the bonus over $100,000. That's a very specific bill. I support it. Why don't you?
Mark, as you know, the Supreme, or any court, not just the Supreme Court, will look at the legislative history of something as it goes through the process to determine exactly what congressional intent was. Nobody who watched television last week or the week before could help but see Senator Charles Schumer of New York saying, we are going to punish AIG, we are going to punish AIG executives, and the fact that they managed to somehow artificially spread the net of the law to make it look like they were not going after AIG. The legislative history is that they were going after AIG. It's a bill of attainder. It's unconstitutional.
They are going after AIG, but they're going after others as well. And the general principle.
Why didn't they go after Merrill Lynch?
You shouldn't take taxpayer money. They are.
No, they didn't. No, they left Merrill Lynch out of it.
If they're getting those bonuses, it's covered.
They left Merrill Lynch out.
We'll be back after this.
This is firstgov.gov, where we're obsessed with getting you government information.
Brand new student loan applications on the site, baby. This calls for a celebration. Where's your uncle?
So in the end, it was either take the astronaut gig or come work here. What can I say? Duty called.
Dude, that's my cop.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure that's Sam's cop.
Oh, sorry?
Yeah. No. Sam's? No.
Just log on or email us and get what you need.
C, change of address form. That's how it's done.
D, driver's license renewal.
E, emailing Social Security information.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice, we'll allow it. All right, Ed.
What are those?
Government surplus cars for auction.
You posted those online last time.
No, you did.
I'm posting them online this time!
For all your government information, firstgov.gov.
Oh, what have we got here? Sometimes you feel tired. You can't seem to lose those extra pounds off your midsection. And your joints hurt when you take the stairs? Well, you're getting older. But I'm happy to say that there's some simple things we can do to keep you happy and healthy for years to come. We can also lower your risk for some serious diseases the older population is often subject to. Proper nutrition is more important than ever. Your body has changed, you know. Not as many treats. A basic exercise plan, lots of walks and fresh air, and most importantly, come and see me for twice-yearly checkups to help ensure the best possible quality of life. Now, how does that sound? Good boy.
Improve the quality of life for your elderly pet. Schedule twice-yearly checkups that include preventive care and regular lab work. A message from the veterinary members of the American Animal Hospital Association.
Here again, the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. My guest, Mike Lane, Republican strategist, and I are discussing the AIG bonuses. And I want to talk, Mike, about, in general, questions, not just specifically about this, but sort of lessons for the future. I will agree with you that any bill that only focuses on AIG is a bill of attainder and is unconstitutional. I know this bill is any company that's $5 billion or more. You mentioned it may have some date restrictions. I firmly agree that because I support the principle, it should apply to any and all companies, whether it's Merrill Lynch or Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or anyone else. But let's talk about the general principle. Assuming that it is not just a bill of attainder, which it shouldn't be, assuming that it applies to any company that gets $5 billion in taxpayer dollars and awards its employees bonuses and they earn over $250,000, what's wrong with taxing 90% of it and getting that money back?
You can't do it ex post facto. I mean, I am so...
Understanding that ex post facto refers to criminal law.
Right, but...
You mean retroactive?
But yeah, you can't do it retroactive.
Why not?
Because it's
not fair.
It's immoral.
It's not fair.
No, it's immoral.
More immoral than what the people at AIG did?
This
is an extraordinary situation.
What is freedom? The freedom...
to steal money from the government?
No. The freedom that we have, actually, it's AIG's money. It's not the government's money. The government gave it to AIG. AIG is obligated...
We own AIG. We're 80% owners.
AIG is obligated to pay it back in full.
Right.
It's...
You're right.
165 or not 165,
if they can,
whatever.
If they can pay it back.
If they can.
We're 80% owners of this company.
And we ought to exercise a little bit more control over them, I think,
But that's my point in general, that shareholders are not controlling corporations in America.
You can't do it after the fact. You cannot do it after the fact. I mean, let's look at it in terms of...
You agree they shouldn't have done it?
Oh,
in the first place.
I wouldn't know. I'm angry.
So now,
I'm part of the angry class.
What would you do to get the money back?
It's too late.
I'm mad at you, but there's
I wouldn't give him any more.
Nothing we can do.
I wouldn't give him any more. Not a single dime.
The problem with AIG goes back to what I was talking about at the very beginning of this broadcast.
Too big to fail.
Too big to fail. Let me suggest to you that no company should be too big to fail. That what we should do, in fact, is limit company size so that we do not have companies that form a systemic risk to the economy. 100 years ago, if you read the great progressive writers at that time, Ida Tarbell and Upton Sinclair, they talked about the power of Standard Oil and the large food companies, the large railroad companies, the monopolies that controlled the United States in the late 1800s. And that's where the Sherman Antitrust Act developed. We broke up these big companies. We broke up AT&T to make sure that no company would be too big to fail. Let me suggest to you that if a company is so big...
Good Republican concept, by the way.
Well, Theodore Roosevelt was a progressive. I don't know what happened to your party since then, but from Lincoln to Roosevelt, your party wasn't such a bad party. Do you agree with me that the government, representing the people, has a right and a duty and an obligation to prevent any one corporation from becoming too big to fail?
Mark, I am going to perhaps surprise you and perhaps surprise our viewers and tell you I don't know. And the reason is, I think in past years, yes, there was absolutely a requirement. I think that's what antitrust was all about.
Absolutely.
That you couldn't have something that was too big to fail. You couldn't have something that was so big that it could behave predatorily towards its competitors and put them out of business.
Right.
I'm totally on. All that's great. Sherman, Clayton, all those things are absolutely
big business hated antitrust law. And we were the first nation to do it, and it was a good law.
That's their problem back then. The problem that you have now is in a global marketplace. If you have a company that's too big to fail, or if you don't have a company that's too big to fail, it might be too small to compete. And I don't know where that gray line or that fine line is, but when you've got major international banking and insurance centers, particularly things like Dubai coming up, Dubai will grab, if we take a company and break it up via antitrust and make it so it's not too big to fail, then it will be too small to compete, and a place like Dubai will grab 90% of the international banking and insurance business, and what do we do then? I don't know the answer to the question. It's a tough philosophical call, and I'm just betwixt and between as to what we do on it.
I actually think insurance companies, part of the reason they succeed, the successful ones, is they do reinsurance. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. You go to Lloyd's of London. You go to Dubai. You pass around.
AIG is a reinsurer.
Well, exactly, but they need to reinsure with others too. Here's the thing. The dirty little secret about the money going to AIG is that very little of that money went to AIG. Most of it went to French banks and German banks. And I understand that French banks and German banks need money in the economy, but I'll leave it to the French to dig into their pockets and the Germans to dig into their pockets, and the people of Dubai, they got lots of pockets. They should pay for their own economic woes. I don't see that we need a Marshall Plan right now where we support France and Germany. I'm happy with the IMF to support some third world countries, but France and Germany, they're fine on their own.
I agree.
The problem is with this too big to fail business is that if we'd broken it up, maybe we could have had a company where we said, you know what, most of your stuff goes to foreign interests. We'll let you go bankrupt. And that would have protected our economy from the dangers of having, frankly, we had two problems. One, they were too big to fail. The others, they were unregulated. So we had, in essence, people taking bets where if heads, they win, tails, we lose. And that was the problem with AIG.
Well, I agree. I think we could have let them fail. Look, the one thing that's been disappointing in terms of Obama's handling of this internationally is he's been unable to get Europe to really buy in full scale to matching with the United States.
France and Germany won't do it. They're relying on us.
They won't do it.
I want to take a call, real quick.
So let AIG fail. Let France and Germany bail out their own banks instead of us bailing out their banks from us to AIG to their banks.
Except, unfortunately, they are too big to fail, and that's the problem we have.
Except then Barack gave them another $30 billion. That's bad money after good.
Because they're too big to fail. They never should be in this situation. You know,
there's
an old if you lend someone $1,000, then they owe you. If you lend someone $1 million, then you're in debt to them because you need that money back.
Right.
You can lend too much money. George from Fairfax, welcome to the Inside Scoop.
Thank you. I got a couple of comments with respect to your issue tonight. First of all, the housing market floats around $20 trillion at any time. Recently, it was floating around $60 trillion. All those foreigners that were investing in companies like AIG, if they didn't know that was the case, they didn't do due diligence, the burden shifts to them. The second part is fiduciary duty. Nobody discusses fiduciary duty. All those executives, and let's do it on a smaller scale. If I own a business and my business is failing, I'm not paying the executives. I'm not going to give them a bonus. Those shareholders own those businesses. They would not pay those people those kind of bonuses if they were going down the tubes. It's bizarre.
And George, see, that's the point I'm trying to make. It's a systemic problem with corporate law, and that's why I think we need some big change to corporate law, just like we created the Federal Reserve in the 19 teens, and we created the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation in the 1930s. We need shareholders to be not just technically in control, but actually in control. And the problem is, in a small company, it's very easy for the shareholders to do exactly what you said, to fire everybody. In these large, publicly held companies, the ones that are too big to fail, there is no shareholder that's more than 1%, and so they have their own little fiefdom. The directors are in bed with the CEO, and he's in bed with the directors, and they all make millions at the shareholders' expense. If people really believed in capitalism, if you really believed in capitalism, you would support my proposal to give the shareholders real effective control.
Let me tell you what I believe.
Can I add to that?
George, before you go, thank you so much for your call. I know you've called here before, and we've sparred a little bit. You'll shudder to know that I agree 100% with everything you said tonight, both your points. You're spot on both of them, particularly the fiduciary responsibility. The directors of the corporation have a fiduciary responsibility to understand and know what the corporation is doing, where they're going, et cetera. If they claim that these insurance policies that they wrote were minimizing the risk and they underplayed this and that's what precipitated this whole thing, then they've breached their fiduciary responsibility and they ought to be investigated and prosecuted, if appropriate, for their failure to live up to their responsibilities. Directors being on a board of directors and taking the kind of money that Mark so hates that directors get paid has responsibility that comes with it. And George, you've knocked it out of the park tonight.
Can I finish up by one more comment?
Don't say anything I'll disagree with.
Go ahead, George.
If those executives think that that's such a good business and they can make that kind of money from it, then they should buy the business and own the business themselves. There's no interest in what they're producing.
Exactly.
All it is a personal piggy bank.
It's exactly right, George. They are parasites. I remember Alan Greenspan, the Federal Reserve Chairman before Ben Bernanke, appearing before a congressional hearing just a few months ago, and he was shocked to find out that directors and CEOs were not looking out for the shareholders, but for their own pockets. They remind me of the police inspector in Casablanca, who was shocked to find out that gambling was going on. Oh my God, people see this huge vat of money, and they take it and they put it in their pockets, and they don't practice fiduciary duties. They don't. And the reason they don't is because the law is weak on this. One of the things I learned in law school is that fiduciaries, unless they literally are putting their hands in their pockets, can do something called the business judgment rule. It's one of those judge-created rules by conservative judges this time that says, well, it makes sense to retain people. It's in their business judgment. We're not going to second-guess their business judgment. The real problem is no one is watching them. The shareholders can't watch them because they don't have the laws to watch them. And I want to see you, Mike, tonight support stronger corporate laws so that shareholders have real effective control and can do what Donald Trump does on The Apprentice every week and say, you're fired.
If indeed it was business judgment, I agree with the courts. Let's not second guess them. However, I think that there ought to be an investigation to find out if it was business judgment or if they were just sweeping things under the rug that they knew about, et cetera. You know, smoking gun memos always exist. No, Mark?
It's not about intent. It's not about intent. The shareholders should be in control, even if it's in their own judgment to pay themselves a lot of money, and you can't prove they were doing it fraudulently. It's legal, but it's wrong. That's why we have to change the law.
In addition to agreeing with George on two, George, you shouldn't have gone to your third point, because I was with you on your first two. Your third one goes a lot too far. But I'm also agreeing with your president, Mark, because yesterday on the talk shows, President Obama dispatched his people, and he dispatched Jared Bernstein, who, as you know, is the chief economic advisor to Joe Biden. Concern that this bill may have some problems is going too far. Some legal issues, constitutional validity, using the tax code to surgically punish a small group. This is a dangerous way to go. Thank you, Mr. Obama.
I disagree with Jared Bernstein. I disagree with the president. These are extraordinary times. These are extraordinary greed heads, and it requires an extraordinary solution. I say tax those bonuses. If you have a comment on tonight's show, let me know at radioinsidescoop.com. This is Mark Levine.